Well, Martin Luther from Germany, of course, was a vicious Nazi Jew hater. Martin Luther from Germany referred to the Jews, first of all, he called the Jews the synagogue of Satan and incited violence and mass murder against the Jews. And by the way, the term synagogue of Satan appears in the Christian Bible. So there's a lot of anti-Semitic incitement to murder in the Christian Bible, unfortunately. And he used this name, synagogue of Satan, and called for, and said that the Talmud should be burned, and that Jewish holy books should be burned. I mean, just vicious anti-Semitism. What happened was he was outraged, just like Muhammad, just like other people. When the Jews refused to convert and refused to accept their religions, they're outraged and they want to murder all the Jews. So this is what happened with Martin Luther. He was outraged at the Jews for daring not to abandon their religion and give up their religion. A vicious Jew killer and Jew hater. And I say Jew killer because he incited people to murder Jews. And Benjamin asks about Martin Luther King Sr., Martin Luther King Jr., and Martin Luther King III. Okay, that's father, son, and grandson. It's interesting that the original name for Martin Luther King was Martin King. That was his original name. I'm talking about Martin Luther King Sr. His original name was Martin King, but he changed it to Martin Luther King. He was an admirer of Martin Luther, the Nazi Jew hater. And this is who the Jews, by the way, gave so much money and so much support to and did so much on behalf of. If the Jews had done for the Jews during the Holocaust 1% of what they did on behalf of the so-called civil rights movement with Martin Luther King, if they had given just 1% of that support to the Jews during the Holocaust, we might not have had a Holocaust. And certainly if they had given much more than that, if they had given 10 or 20% of what if they had done 20% on behalf of the Jews during the Holocaust, then there definitely wouldn't have been a Holocaust. But anyway, that didn't bother the Jews, that he takes the name of a vicious Jew hater, Martin Luther. And Martin Luther King Sr., again, Martin Luther King Sr. is the father of the Martin Luther King Jr. that we have the holiday for. Martin Luther King Sr. Was a longtime friend and supporter of all types of anti-Semites, black anti-Semites, supported the militant black agenda, was a strong supporter of Jimmy Carter, gave speeches at the Democrat convention where Jimmy Carter was nominated, and I remember he was a big supporter of Jimmy Carter, big defender of Jimmy Carter, the anti-Semite. So, in other words, just bad news for the Jewish people. And without the Jews, he would have been nothing. And Martin Luther King Jr., his son, Benjamin asked about Martin Luther King Jr., his son, he plagiarized. He's called the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He got a doctorate. And his thesis that he wrote his so-called doctorate for was plagiarized. He plagiarized on his tests in college. He plagiarized on his thesis. He plagiarized in his speeches. This person who we have a national holiday for was just a con man and a plagiarizer and a crook and someone who associated with every black anti-Semite under the sun. He associated with Elijah Muhammad. Who's Elijah Muhammad? Elijah Muhammad was the head of the Nation of Islam. A group that said that all whites are devils and the whole white race is going to be exterminated. That was a friend of Martin Luther King Jr. Malcolm X was someone who Martin Luther King Jr. met with and associated with. And he went to conferences. In 1967, there was a black conference of black organizations and black leaders where they voted to condemn the Jews and condemn Israel and condemn Zionism. Martin Luther King attended the conference. He didn't speak up against this, even though most of his funds came from self-hating Jews. Almost all of his public relations work was done by self-hating Jews who volunteered to do public relations work for him and defend him and fight for him, and Jewish journalists and Jewish contributors and Jewish donors and you name it. And so-called rabbis went to the South and got arrested, things they never did for the 6 million Jews during the Holocaust, things they never did for Soviet Jewry. In the 1960s, they could have done this for Soviet Jewry. They never did any of this for Soviet Jewry. But for Martin Luther King and for the black anti-Semites, they went down south and got arrested on behalf of the black anti-Semites. Oh, what a sick story. By the way, Martin Luther King Jr., in addition to being anti-Semitic and being a phony and a fraud and an opportunist, he defended communist North Vietnam. He defended their land grabbing program of grabbing land and murdering landowners, which was condemned by Western countries. Martin Luther King defended them. Martin Luther King also said that the United States is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. That's a quote. He made a famous speech where he said, when he was attacking the U.S. policy in Vietnam, he said the United States is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. In other words, the United States is the bad guy, not Muslim terrorist countries, not the communist world. 1960s, the communist world was openly conquering countries and openly vowing to conquer the world. No, they're not the bad guys. The bad guys, the United States is the bad guy, is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. That was Martin Luther King Jr., whom we have a national holiday today for. Not a single American president, not a single white person gets a national holiday, but Martin Luther King Jr., the anti-American, anti-white, anti-Semitic, phony, fake, fraud, plagiarizer, he gets a national holiday. And then we have Martin Luther King III is the, as our great Yosef Ben Meir, who used to be my co-host on the program, Alav HaShalom, peace should be upon him, he should rest in peace. Yosef Ben Meir used to say, when we'd say Martin Luther King III, Yosef used to say, I hope he's the last. Anyway, he's the oldest son of Martin Luther King, and of course friends with Barack Hussein Osama, who in turn is friends with Louis Farrakhan, friends with all the black Jew haters, spoke at the Jew-hating pedophile Michael Jackson's memorial service, has made speeches and organized with people on behalf of open borders. He wants America to have completely open borders. In other words, basically the scum of the earth. I don't know how else to put it. The scum of the earth.